Hi, my name is Sir David. I'm your computer science teacher, and today you're going to learn about computer components. So first thing first, this is called monitor. It's called monitor, a monitor that you interact with the computer. And this display displays the user interface so that you could interact and use the computer as the way you like. And the next one is about mouse and keyboard. This is keyboard, and this is called mouse. So with mouse, you move the pointer on the monitor. There'll be a pointer, there's no pointer here, so I'll just draw one. Like this. It's quite big here. I drew it very big so that you could see it. Actually, it's very small, and this pointer, it moves around by moving the mouse. So when you move the mouse, you hold it like this, and you move from left to right and front and back. You don't need to rotate the mouse, as it doesn't do anything. So even if you rotate the mouse direction will still be pointing like this. It will not rotate. So you have to just move to the left and right and front and back. So that's the only direction in using the mouse. And when you hold the mouse, there are three buttons: left side, right side, and the middle rolling button. So the left side is the primary click. This is the secondary clicking button. So you would rarely use the right side. So you have to use the left side. This is for clicking, confirming anything that you do. So you put your index finger on the left side and your middle finger on the right side. And you rotate this ball with your index finger when required. So usually you put your fingers, you rest both of your fingers on the button, and the rest of the fingers, they grab the mouse so that you could precisely move the mouse to your desired location. So that's how you use the mouse. And let's look at the keyboard. In keyboard, there are all the alphabets here. Oops, I'll choose the white color and the size to 4. All the alphabets are here, A to Z. So you can press your desired alphabet with your fingers. But here comes the difficult part. Even though all the alphabets are available on the keyboard, you still have to place your finger on ASDF and JKL semicolon. This is required because later, when you get used to the keyboard, you would want to type some sentences in a hurry manner, very quickly. And in that case, when your fingers are in those ASDF and JKL semicolon position, you could type something very fast, like this. You would see in some movies, some hackers, they type very quickly, and on the screen, the letters that they wrote are filling up the screen very quickly. So in that case, you can't just type like this. If you type like this, you'll be like wasting a lot of time, and then in exam, you won't have enough time to finish the questions. And also in the real life situation, your working time would be increased. You would have a hard time finishing a job in a short period of time. So you have to put your fingers ASDF, JKL semicolon, and on your thumbs on the space bar. So when you look at it, it's like this: ASDF, JKL semicolon, and thumb on the space bar. In that case, your index finger, right index finger is on J, and it could reach U and M. U and M. So your middle finger is on K, and it could reach I and comma, like something like that. So all your fingers have their own dedicated keys. So in that case, you would know what finger to use when you become a speed typer. And this is called control. The short form is, the short form is CTRL. The long form is control. And this one is alter. ALT is equal to ALTER, alter. And this is cap lock. Cap lock is like a shift key that is pressed continuously. When you press shift and press the alphabets are written in a capital letter. But when you press cap lock, you don't need to press a shift key anymore. Instead, you could write the alphabets all in capital letter. So that's a function of a cap lock. And shift key is for writing the capital letter. Here is another alter. This is the same. And control, they are the same. This is space bar. We can just call space. And here is a shift. This and this is the same. And this one is called enter. When you press enter, the cursor would move down. We'll talk about it later. I'll teach you in the Microsoft Word lesson. Okay, let's continue on words. This is called CPU case. This CPU case is a casing for a lot of components, excluding keyboard, mouse, and display because they are the external components. Inside the CPU case, there are motherboard, RAM, CPU, graphical unit, GPU, and some floppy disks from the olden days. You can still install it inside the CPU case, and hard disk drive, and disk drive, and also, most importantly, power supply. Without a power supply, nothing is going to run. And so this is the CPU case. There are a lot of different type of CPU casings. Some come with a glass wall like this, and some they are not even standing up horizontally. They are like lying flat on the ground. There are a lot of different styles. So let's carry on. First thing first, we'll learn motherboard. This is called motherboard. It's a motherboard. I know what you're thinking. There is no fatherboard, okay? There's only motherboard. In motherboard, you can see this. You can see this. All these looks like we could put something there, and that's correct. These are called slot. Oops. These are called slots. So this is where we put the CPU in. So this is a CPU slot, this is a RAM slot, and these are where we put the graphical processing units, the GPUs. And this is the same type of motherboard, but this is a little for more like a gaming purpose. This is for classical purpose, like office works, and they are the same. Here, the CPU slot. Here, you can also see the CPU slot. Here's the CPU slot. This is for the RAM, and this is for GPU. So, and the side panel, you see there are like input-output ports. These are called ports. These are called ports. So, when we go back to the CPU casing, here you'll see a hole at the back of the casing. When you look at this, you'll see this. This, actually it's a hole. It's not connected to the CPU case. So this hole is this. And those are for these ports. And here you can see USB. Here's a USB port. And here are some audio and some analog jack ports. And here there's another USB port, HDMI here, and here RJ45. This is the internet cable port. RJ45 port. It's a female port. So it's very similar between the motherboards. They are different build from different companies, but still the places are quite similar. Here there's a HDMI. In olden days they use VGA. This is called VGA port. So we plug in the VGA cord here and plug it into the display. And that's how it works, but now we use the HDMI. And here you will see two USB port, here two USB port, and here there's a little HDMI here, and two USB port here, two USB port here. So there are some similarities. And we could use any case that we want to install different CPU motherboards. So let's go on. Let's learn about CPU. Back in the motherboard, the CPU case, there's a CPU slot here. We put the CPU on it. And this is the CPU. This is magnified. The actual size of a CPU is only about the length of your thumb. It might be even smaller than that. So this is the upper side. This is CPU. This is the upper side. And this is the lower side. So the long form of CPU is Central Processing Unit. That's CPU. CPU. Central Processing Unit. And there are a lot of things happening inside, but we'll talk about it later. And when you look at the underside, there are so many pins here. You can see a lot of pins here. These pins are very delicate. If you touch it with your finger, it might bend, and if it bends, you can't use the CPU anymore. There must not be any faults in the CPU pins. So these are called pins. So this is a CPU. You'll see here there's an Intel. That means it is produced by the Intel department of Microsoft company. And Core i7, that's their model name. i7, it's the second highest CPU level. There are a lot of levels, starting from i3, i5, i7, and now there's i9. And after that, there are so many like generations. My laptop, for example, it has an i7 and 7 generation. With the different generations, the higher, the better, the faster the clock speed. So i3 is the slowest clock speed, but still, it's still enough for some office works. If you're a gamer, at least I recommend i5. But i9 is quite expensive, but you get the best performance with it. So i7 is like in the middle, a balanced type. And so let's continue. So this is called RAM. The long form is Random Access Memory. Random access memory is when you look at the motherboard. Here, there's a slot. It's a very long one. Random access memory is also long, and you can see a little bump here. So that is for here. When we magnify this, here you can see a little bump here. So that opening is actually for this bump. If we put the RAM in the wrong way, we could destroy the RAM. So if we put the RAM in the wrong way, it could destroy the RAM. So we have to be careful while inserting the RAM. So here you can see some little nodes, some little blocks, black blocks. These are actually where we store the memories. The data, the information that the CPU needs to process, but doesn't have enough time for those. The extra informations that need to be processed is stored here for a very short period of time, temporarily. So this is the RAM. Let's continue onwards. This is GPU. Oops. Graphical processing unit. So graphical processing unit is actually a very thin, like a motherboard thin, a thin one. But you can see here, it's like very thick. Actually, the thick part is this. Oops. The GPU is this small one. This thing. That's actually the GPU. And this one is actually fan. It's a fan. The GPU is here. GPU is just a small sheet of like a CPU, like a motherboard, and actually it becomes very hot when we're using it. So we need to install a very big fan on it, and we're using the GPU to process the picture quality, the display quality. Let's say your monitor can provide 4K video with 144 Hz display. In that case, the CPU cannot process all of the requirements, the display anymore. So in that case, GPU took over the display and it modifies and improve the output, and then it could show in a 144 Hz and 4K display. So these are the GPU. Both are GPU and different brands and companies. So let's go back to the CPU again. What does CPU do? CPU is actually the brain of a computer, and it processes everything we do. Let's say I move a mouse a little bit to the left side, and that data information is actually sent to the motherboard, and from motherboard to the CPU. And the CPU knows that it is moved to the left side. And in that case, the CPU provides to the display and move the mouse a little bit to the left. So that's how the CPU works. The CPU, it provides any processing requirements, and it processes it and gives back the outcome. So without a CPU, computer is just a dead zombie. It's not going to move, or it's not going to operate anything. So CPU is the brain, but still, as we have learned, the power supply unit, without the power supply unit, CPU is not going to operate, because CPU requires electricity to operate. And what about the RAM? CPU has limits. Even though if we install i9 13 Gen, which is the latest CPU level, there's the most powerful CPU currently in the Intel department. Even if we install i9 and 13 Gen, it has a limit. Let's say I'm playing a Dota 2, it's a game, and everything needs to be processed, but the CPU has a limit, so it's not going to process everything immediately. So it would take some parts, process it, and there are some parts left. While it is processing the previous one, the things that needs to be processed is stored in the RAM. So that's the main and only purpose of RAM. It stores the data that needs to be processed for a while, for a very short time. It can only store data for a very short time that even if you like try to store your picture, let's say, a very small size, like 1 megabyte, if you store it there, within 1 second, the picture would be gone because it cannot store the information for a long time. But its RAMs, the advantages of using the RAM is that it could process the data incoming and outgoing a lot of time within 1 second, and it's not going to cause any damage to the RAM. So let's continue. For the GPU, as we have learned, it improves the display quality. And this is the power supply unit. This supplies the electricity required to the CPU, not to the display, but also to the keyboard and mouse. So let's look at here. This is a power supply unit. This supplies all the components inside with this big red colorful cables, and each cable, they carry different amount of voltage. So for example, for the GPU, it requires a lot of electricity, so it has a little bulgier, a bigger cable going to it. But the RAM doesn't require any direct electricity. And here, when we look at it, we'll see the head here. These heads go to different components, and as we look at here, this is for the GPU. It has 6 pins, and it works individually. It doesn't take an electricity supply from the motherboard. So what about the CPU, RAMs, and some fans, the CPU fans? They acquire the they acquire the electricity from the motherboard. So the motherboard has to take in a lot of electricity, and that's why the pin for motherboard is very big. It has, I think, more than 20 pins in there. So here you can see SSD. It has a dedicated power supply here. There's a note. And this is a hard disk drive. It is also provided electricity directly from the power supply unit. So let's go back to here. This is the input. You plug in your cable here, and this is the switch. You turn it off. You turn it on or off here. And the input is mostly, for our country, which is Myanmar, it's mostly 220 volts. So when you plug in 220 volts, it's okay. And it will also be written here. So when you buy a new computer and you're going to set up yourself, read the descriptions first. So let's carry on. Here you can see this is all the components. There's a little old dated, but we'll go with this. Here you can see this is the motherboard, and this is the GPU. This is a disk drive. I'll write it, GPU. Motherboard, and this is a mouse. This is a hard disk drive, HDD. This is a CPU. This is a memory. And this is an audio card. We're not going to learn about this. And here's a monitor. Behind here is actually CPU case. keyboard. So these are the names of the different components. Here you can see this is a gaming setup, I believe. It's quite beautiful and decorative. So, and I believe this is a water cooled because there are some pipes here, and there are two GPUs installed in here, and that means this is I believe this computer is for like video editing or photographer. It's used by a photographer. When we go back to the motherboard, you can also see that there are two slots here. So that means you can install two GPUs on the motherboard. And here, there's the disk drive. The disk drive is here. Oops. The disk drive is here. And this is the power supply unit. And there are some free space here. You can insert any other components you want. Okay. If we look at this, there's a CPU case with all the components inside, and a display, keyboard, and mouse. And this is also for a gaming setup. Okay, let's continue. Oh, then we're done with this. I haven't teach you about the hard disk drive, where you store your data and information, because we're going to talk about it next time, because I want to talk about it in detail, because in storage, oops, there are two types of storage: hard disk drive and solid state drive. And I want you to understand it, so I'm not going to talk about it in the computer components. And there will be lesson 2 for the computer components. In that lesson 2, we'll talk about hard disk drive and solid state drive. Okay, thank you so much for attending my class. See you next time.